Let's have a look here.
I think we can start in a few minutes.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get onto YouTube and then you can take over. Okay, over to you, Jackie.
Thank you everyone again for joining us for our, I think it's the penultimate session for the year. And just to introduce it again, this is Fenchurch Professionals Migration to Ghana aspect. So it's a collaboration of a series of events or conversations that we have with people to kind of get them to understand a bit more about the realities of moving to Ghana. And everyone, we always think that we're going to be millionaires straight away or in the next 5 years, but which we possibly could be, but what does that mean? And we have today Parkwasi Hagen in terms of introducing to us the realities on the legal side and just the investment side as well. So I'm going to I will allow you to introduce yourself, and then I'm going to try and get some of your credentials up as well. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, and we would like your camera on.
Am I on? Oh, okay. All right then. Am I on?
Yes, you're on and we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hello everybody. So happy to be here. By way of introduction, full name is Parkwasi Hagen. I'm a lawyer by profession. The managing partner of a boutique law firm known as Globetrotters Legal. We have an office in Ghana and Senegal, so we cover both countries in terms of services that we provide. I'm a Fanti from Salt Pond. For those of you who are from the central region, um, for as we say, I'm a Fanti from Salt Pond. Globetrotters has been in existence for about 11 years. We focus primarily on business research, corporate law, corporate immigration, and tax advisory. Those are the main drivers of what we do at the firm. I have other business interests as well. I'm in the oil and gas space. I have a company providing rental services of equipment to the oil and gas sector. I have interest in HR sourcing entities, one in the oil and gas sector and one in the non-oil and gas sector. I have a company called Expat Relocations, and basically that helps foreigners relocate to Ghana for work purposes. So basically, that's a bit about me.
I'd like to find out a bit more about yourself as well. So how you started in your career, and then how that's transitioned to holding multiple things in your hand.
Okay, so just a little bit of background. Straight after law school, worked for one of the top law firms in Ghana for the first 4 or 5 years. I hadn't taken a pause to ask myself what I really wanted to do. So initially, I was doing quite a lot of things, litigation, all other areas of law. And I just woke up one day and said I was just going to take a month off to really ask myself what I really wanted to do. And once I did that, the next month I set up my own law firm. And same time I set up the relocation company because that one month gave me perspective as to what I actually wanted to do. So that was the beginning of Globetrotters Legal, which was the first in the series of companies that I set up, and expat relocations. So the idea was to help foreigners relocate to Ghana for work purposes. The legal side will be handled by Globetrotters Legal, and the expat relocations takes care of the other, ancillary stuff like the looking for properties for them, schools for their kids, artisans to help them, the whole package. So those were the first two companies that we set up in 2011, and subsequently, I was just looking for opportunities to invest. Oil and gas became topical at some point, so looked in and thought what I could get in and try and make the best out of it. So I got introduced to a few people who were into equipment rental, and that's how I got in. We formed a JV with a foreign partner, and we moved from there. The HR sourcing part, that's a passion of mine as well. I always thought so many Ghanaians who don't have placement in these companies, basically because they do not actually know about it. or or are being sidelined in a way. So set up two companies, one for the oil and gas sector and one for the non-oil and gas sector. Basically, to have a database of for the oil and gas sector, have a database of Ghanaians who um, have the skill set to work in the sector, but for some reason, have not had the opportunity. So more or less meeting the opportunity with the people that are actually in our database. And it was good because at the time, the regulator of the sector, the Petroleum Commission, was keen on local content, and localization, succession planning. So all of these things fused into my plan, and that was set up as well. So basically that's how I moved from company one to where I am today.
Fabulous, extensive. What if I wanted to get into oil and gas, or anyone on this platform, what are the pitfalls that you'd advise us to avoid, and what's changed from maybe 10 years ago to now, and where is it going from your perspective?
Okay, so I think that basically there's now a focus on local content. I mean, we had a local content law that was passed a couple of years ago, and it seeks to more or less get Ghanaians in the oil and gas space by legislation. So you would find that the local content law will talk about some certain positions in the oil and gas sector being reserved for Ghanaians, in an attempt to make sure that these expatriate companies, in terms of employment, do not bypass Ghanaians who may have the competency. In cases where foreigners are even coming in, there are requirements of the regulator for the foreigners to be, to have understudies who are Ghanaians, in an attempt to pass on the information and knowledge and skill set that otherwise they wouldn't have. So I would say that in that space, even if you are here to take up employment, there's a focus on the Ghanaian. So that's a good point there. And the good thing is that the regulator more or less is very tough on this when it comes to um, um, expatriate firms, making sure that Ghanaians are involved in their dealings. For those that actually want to set up businesses, it will be good to first look at the space. I mean, there are quite a lot of you know support services that are available for you to look at. In my case, I spoke about equipment rental. And before I forget, so the law also makes it mandatory for any foreigner coming in terms of a partner, you know, should have a Ghanaian company as well. So the joint venture arrangements have been instances where the Ghanaians have, more or less, you know, um, put a foot in the door in terms of collaborating to do this business. So for those that actually, as I said, are looking at entering the space, support services, hospitality services in the sector, critical. You also can look at supply of materials. I mean, and a whole range that are currently available. And the good thing is that, as I said, the atmosphere is conducive. Once you get to the regulator, you would actually be assisted with most of these information that they have on
Right.
file in respect of avenues that Ghanaians can take advantage of. Jackie.
Okay, thank you for that. So getting to the nitty-gritty of your business as well. If we were to relocate, what are the first things you advise us to do from the legal aspects, in terms of getting ourselves, for example, there's two routes. If I want to set up my own business, what are the things I must ensure I do? What is my status that I must try and get? And then if I want to also be an employee, I found a job, what next? I found a job in Ghana. Am I applying as an expat? Am I applying as a returnee? What other things that I need to bear in mind legally when I'm returning?
Okay, so for my experience, those that are returning to take up employment usually would weigh the option in terms of what package they get, because I know quite a lot of Ghanaians who are dual nationals who tend to negotiate on the expatriate salary, because that usually it's on a higher side than if you were a Ghanaian, that is the truth of the matter, because most um, Ghanaian contracts that I've seen for certain roles tend to be lower than an expatriate. So you get some Ghanaians using their foreign nationality for purposes of relocation and getting a better contract, right? So that's what I would say. But for those that actually want to set up businesses, those who want to set up businesses, sorry about that. For those who want to set up businesses in Ghana, basically they have to make a choice in that sense. The reason is that when a foreigner is investing in Ghana as a foreigner, so if you're Ghanaian and assuming you've lost your citizenship and you are, a holder of a foreign passport, the equity requirement by the law tends to be higher than if you were a Ghanaian, more or less setting up a business. So that is something that I want you to look at. A foreigner who is setting up a business in Ghana would have to have an equity contribution in case of a joint venture with a Ghanaian of about $200,000, and if it's a fully owned foreign company, i.e., being owned fully by the foreign, or let's say Ghanaian who's lost his citizenship, you're looking at bringing $500,000 as equity for a fully owned foreign company. But if you're in as a Ghanaian, there's no restriction. I mean, as low as 500 Ghana cedis, you can set up a business, and that would be the more or less the minimum equity contribution that you would need. So that's
Right.
something that you need to look at.
That's good. So if I am born in Ghana, I've come back, but I now don't have a citizenship, I've just about got a passport. What's the route I take to ensure that I'm paying the 50 Ghana cedis and not $500,000? How do I
Actually,
ensure that
the minimum of 500 cedis. Yeah. So
500?
for the setup, one will require a tax identification number. Basically, that's the first step. Now, in requesting for tax
The TIN
identification
number.
number, the TIN number, sorry, you need to demonstrate with proof of ID, and demonstrate whether you're Ghanaian or not. So in most cases, you would have to complete a detail as a Ghanaian and provide some sort of ID. It may not necessarily be a passport, but assuming you have a local ID in Ghana, that can be used. That's if you don't have a Ghanaian passport. Now, if you want to prove your citizenship, you may not have a passport, but our citizenship laws basically envisages a situation where your citizenship can be traced from either one of your parents or one of your grandparents. So if one of your parents is Ghanaian, you are Ghanaian. You're able to demonstrate that you're Ghanaian, even if you don't hold the passport. So there are ways to more or less demonstrate if you're Ghanaian for purposes of setting up a business. If you do not even have the passport, you know. So that's what I think. I mean, you can still demonstrate even if you don't hold the Ghanaian passport.
How long does that process take in general? So I think I'm going to go in December and I'm going to set up my own business. What's the general, obviously every circumstance is different, but ideally, what's the timeline that I should bear in mind when establishing my business there, registering it legally?
Yeah, so you're looking at from start of registration to completion. This can be done within 3 weeks to a month. It may be sooner, but barring any challenges or requests for additional information, or more or less putting paperwork together, give yourself a timeline of up to about a month. It may be sooner.
Okay, also in regards to the expats or returnees that you've worked with, what are the common mistakes that you find that they make or we make when you're working with us, or just their personal experience as well with other stuff outside of your services?
Okay, so first of all, I've had I mean some of my friends actually who have returned. They had initially been assured of certain positions and a different view about what to expect when they come back. So I've had people come in and leave about two or and return about 2 or 3 times and are still not able to settle because they came with a different perception and assurances from people that probably were not the right people, to advise. So basically, what I would say is, take a trip or two, come back, see for yourself, rather than just listen to somebody saying it. Have a feel. I mean, at the end of the day, you may have left a while back. As you know, I know some of you may have left about 20 plus years. Ghana has changed, so you do need to come back and more or less reorient yourself with being a Ghanaian again. You know, before, especially for work purposes, before you come in. There have been so many changes that I would, more or less recommend you come in, study the environment on a trip or two before you actually make the move. Because once you make the move, you would have at least familiarized yourself with, most of the things that you actually want to get into. Just jumping on a plane and coming and set it up would definitely have some risks because you may be surprised, depending on where you got your information from.
What industry? Sometimes a lot of us don't know. We want to move back to Ghana. Some of us don't have businesses. Or maybe they have ideas and they have potentials. But what area do you feel that it's one that is not tapped into as much that could be a niche for returnees to go into, particularly with our international experience or overseas experience that could help?
Yeah, so the two ways to look at this question. You can look at it from the point of view of which businesses, gives me the most benefits, right? Or which businesses will give me the kind of return of investment that I need whilst enjoying it. A couple of industries pop up. So you're looking at a situation where agribusiness currently, right, is very topical. I mean, there's so many incentives for people going into agro processing in terms of tax breaks. You actually the corporate tax currently is 25%, but if you go into agro business, you're guaranteed to pay, I think, about 1% corporate tax. So those are some of the incentives that the law allows, trying to attract people into certain sectors. And I think agro business is a very good business, and to it's time consuming. It takes a whole lot of commitment, but the return on investment is really good. And as I said, you have a 1% corporate tax because the government itself wants to promote people getting into agro business. The other one I would also mention is if you want to enter waste processing business as well, that's also one of the areas that I would say is very lucrative. That also you have a very good tax break of about 1% out of the 25% that you would have typically paid as corporate tax. Affordable housing is also one other area that you can look at. I mean, the housing deficit, it goes without saying that it's huge. I would not advise you to go into the high end apartments that go for $3,000, $5,000 kind of thing, because I think that the market is saturated. It's more like quite a lot of apartments competing for the few people that can actually afford. So if you go into affordable housing, that you would get a good market for, a good return on your investment, and you basically will have breaks as well. Because if you're getting in that space, the tax law allows you certain breaks there too in terms of the taxes that you pay. Manufacturing business is the final one that I'll mention. That also has very good incentives. That also a reduced tax rate of about 18% from the 25% that you would ordinarily have paid for any other company. And some of these businesses that you set up, you can also look at um, those in the free zones because that also has some additional benefits. And when I mention free zones, it's basically companies that will probably be focusing on, let's say, 90 to 100% export. So if you're producing to export, there's an opportunity to set up with a free zone regime, and that guarantees you a whole lot of benefits as well. So in sum, those are the key sectors that I think, you may have the most benefit if you're looking at investing.
Also, just remind everyone, you can pop your questions in the chat below. I will read them out. But also, you mentioned free zone and exporting. Thank you so much for giving us the nuggets we're all going to steal. But what ideally, apart from food, do people, which that's good for export in Ghana? So, if I went to Turkey, I'd say maybe clothes or something like that, or China, I'd say hair. What's ideally exportable that's lucrative as well, similar to the examples you gave before about business?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right on the, you know the nail right on the head. I mean, it's food first and foremost. So there's a bigger market for food than I think any other. But they are now clothing. There are so many African prints. There's so many designers now. I mean, you hardly find me wearing, I mean, on my off days, anything that is not Ghanaian made. They are fantastic designers
Love
now.
that.
So you can go into that business. Now I think that quite a lot of these top Ghanaian designers have exposure out there, sending their produce and walking the catwalks of major fashion countries and stuff like that. So that's also there. Footwear, there's a focus now on some companies that are doing fantastic in terms of footwear made in Ghana. I mean, there's a company, a Ghanaian, fully Ghanaian owned, who that this guy makes watches. I mean, watches that can rival, all the top brands, basically. So, in terms of a scale, I still think that food is on top of the list, but there are other goods that you can always get into in terms of exporting. Maybe a bit more difficult than food because I think there's a ready market for our produce, pineapples and stuff like that, the palm oil and all of those things. But there are other non-traditional food and other ventures that you can get into, that you can end up exporting.
Okay, thank you. Someone has a question here, saying, do you need a lawyer or a legal person to be able to register a company in Ghana, or can you do that yourself?
Okay, that's quick answer. Yes, you need a lawyer. You can always be assisted to set up a business, but there are so many things that you would overlook if you don't use a lawyer. I mean, there's a new Companies Act in force, which now makes you know certain things that you have to refer to a lawyer for. I mean, you even setting up a business now, changes that have been introduced include having to do statutory declarations, and these are documents that have to be drafted by a lawyer, and you have to fill beneficial ownership forms, and these things have been introduced to check money laundering and others. Even setting up the statute of the entity, the regulations in terms of what what should govern the operations of the business, I think that you still need legal advice on. The company registry offers certain templates, but without an explanation of what you know these contain, you would be found wanting once some of the issues come up. I mean, there are regular filings that you have to do, annual returns, a couple of things that you actually would need a lawyer's advice. And in most cases, most people will set up, a lawyer for the company secretarial position because then they're able to get the legal advice, set up advice, as well as any changes that they will need to take account of once they are running the business. So I think that you have to get a lawyer involved. Yes, you can set up without a lawyer, but you're better off getting a lawyer to assist with the process.
Okay, thank you for that. You mentioned the business side that is good to go into, but also what about the employment side? So what jobs or what companies or industries and sectors, if I want to be employed, I don't have a business as yet, and I want to have the safety net of having a stable income, what's
Yeah.
kind of good to go to being an expat? Obviously, the world is your oyster, but maybe law. If you, for example, if you're a Ghanaian and you go into medicine in America or London, you have to retrain or take a different exam, which could take 2 to 3 years. But obviously, the dividends afterwards is better. However, what's quick and easy, and then what are also the things that we have to bear in mind if you want to be a lawyer, you have to go and do the bar or whatever it is. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I may just be able for now. I may not speak. I may not be able to speak about the medical cycle, but in terms of legal, yes, you have to get called to the Ghana bar. So that process you can do that within a year, and then once you are called to the bar, you are fit now to start your practice here. Um, in terms of the practice itself, there's a whole range of things that you can do depending on your specialty. You do not necessarily have to go into litigation. I did litigation in the beginning, but I jumped straight back into corporate. So whatever you're comfortable with, you can partner with other Ghanaians. In the beginning, not necessarily want to set up on your own, but if you have the competency, to manage the firm, I mean, that can also, once you're called to the bar, can also be done even from year one, you know. For the other sectors, I would say, depending on um, your area of specialty, I see quite a lot of people coming into the banking sector. That's really stable, have a lot of benefits. Usually with the expertise from outside of Ghana, they may tend to get a much higher position um, because of the qualification. Because in sectors like that, that really matters. So the banking sector is very secure. Bank of Ghana, I know it's restricted recruitment. It's not open to everybody, but I think the banking sector, Bank of Ghana jobs may be one of the safest in terms of benefits. But generally, the banks are, current banks are doing well. I mean, a few years ago, I think it was last year, yeah, the banking reshuffle. So I would assume that the banks that did not have or did not meet the standard are no longer in existence, so those that are there may guarantee you the benefits that you're looking for, so that's also a good sector. IT sector is also booming in Ghana. There's so many Ghanaian tech gurus that are doing fantastic. So if you're in the IT space, that is also something to look at. You can set up your own or join an already existing business for the start to get into the market, and then once you're in, you can carve your own brand. So the IT sector and telecom sector is also doing very well. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're an engineer or have some oil and gas experience, you know the atmosphere is very conducive for a returnee to get into that market, because the focus of the regulator is to more or less develop the local content and put Ghanaians first. So that is also something to look at.
Thank you for that. How does one juggle having a stable job, 9 to 5, and then also their own business? Or I've come to Ghana, I've got a job, it pays, and then I want to set up my own business. What advice would you give to us that want to do that?
Yes, so that also, I'll start with it depends on the job that you're doing. I mean, some jobs are so demanding that on a Monday to Friday, you may not have enough time to do anything else. So, first of all, know the job that you're doing. And for those that have this sort of arrangement, they can look at a weekend option. I have friends who are running farming, farming activities, poultry, piggery on the weekend, So they do their 9 to 5, and then on the weekends they spend with the animals on the farm, and that brings in a lot of revenue as well, especially poultry farming. Eggs are always in demand, and with the upcoming season, I think it's good season for them, because December, I'm sure, of all the months in the year, you make the most sales in December. So those are the kinds of things you can do farming over the weekend. But as I said, you may have a job that's flexible Monday to Friday. You can then plan something to do during the week. But for those that do not have any flexibility, weekend job is always an option to look at. I have friends who are in the legal space, who work about 5 6 hours a day on a Monday to Friday. So they're able to combine. They do consultancy on the side. They would draft contracts and get side businesses. You know, so it depends on the job that you're in. You can always combine. I mean, you can always make it. Ghana is your home. You can always find a way.
Okay, thanks for that. Keep the questions coming. Someone's asked, how does one get a residence permit, and what is that? And what happens if you don't get a permit in Ghana?
Okay, so the residence permit will be for the person who doesn't have a Ghanaian passport, right? So you may have been born in the UK or elsewhere, and you want to relocate to Ghana. Basically, you need a residence permit. For the person who sets up the business, right, they're able to get a residence permit based on the business that they set up. So they would typically have to go through a process at the Ghana Immigration Service after their business is set up. And then once they go through that process and submit the required documentation, they may be issued with a residence permit. Now, for those that are returning for employment, they will need a two-step. If you're coming on an expat contract and you're being um, construed as a non-Ghanaian, you will need a work permit and a residence permit. So that also you go through the immigration service for that process. Get the work permit first, which has to be sponsored by the entity that is recruiting you, and then once you get the work permit, you can then submit your passport to get a residence permit. Once you have the residence permit, that allows you, for the period that you have the residence permit, to leave Ghana and come in any time without a need for a visa. So strictly speaking, that's the process. And then once you have the residence permit, it's valid for the period that it says it does. And then once it expires, you have to renew it. Now, on the residence permit side, um, there's a possibility to get an indefinite residence permit once you meet the criteria. So let's say you stayed in Ghana for a while, right? A minimum of 7 years, or you're married, if you're not using your status, assuming you're not even Ghanaian, and you get married to a Ghanaian, you have a pathway to get permanent residency if you're married to a Ghanaian. There are various routes. And then once you are in Ghana for a while, you can then apply for, you know, having satisfied the condition, indefinite residence permit as well. So those are the things that come to mind when you speak about having a residence permit. But if you're
Thank you.
Ghanaian, you don't need it, and you have a Ghanaian passport, and your roots are here, you would not need a residence permit, basically.
What happens if you come on an expat contract, but you hold a Ghanaian passport? Is that possible? Or,
So far as
or
you're
do
a
you?
holder of a Ghanaian passport, it's possible. I actually have, first of all, yeah, to an answer to your question is possible. I have clients that are in that more or less category. They have a Ghanaian passport and they have the foreign passport as well. The company that was sending them, they opted to use the foreign passport for their package and everything. So they got their relocation expenses and everything. They came to Ghana, But for all other matters, let's say traveling to ECOWAS regions, going to Nigeria, they will not even use their foreign passport. They'll use a Ghanaian passport, basically. So, if you have the Ghanaian passport, yes, it opens quite a lot of doors for you. So you can use both, basically, you know, because once you're Ghanaian and you have the passport, you're Ghanaian, but you can have a foreign contract based on your foreign passport, which is something that I've seen being done by quite a few people that I've dealt with in the space.
Okay, thanks for that. On to expenses now. Asked a few people these questions in terms of salary expectations and what to then factor in if you're an employee, to say this is in the UK generally, on average, they'll give you a car, a company car. But what should we kind of, introduce in terms of contract negotiation when we're trying to get other things? The salary doesn't meet our expectations, but then you can get X, Y, Z that then compensates for it. What are the things we should factor in?
Yeah, so in that space, I mean, statutory wise, there's no what do I say? There's no prescription that if you are coming, you need to get a car, you need to get a house. It's purely on company policy and your negotiation skills, basically, in terms of your relocation package. As you rightly said, most people would request for a car, accommodation, and it depends on the size of the entity that you're coming to Ghana to work for. If they can't afford it, they may not be able to go with you. So, but most of these companies that I would say are medium to big size would typically afford um, a car for you and maybe accommodation as well, and some allowances that will help you. If they are even not getting you accommodation, they probably would give you some allowance that will help you to manage that. So that you have to insist on. Pension, insist that those payments are made on your behalf. For the employee, you would be required as part of your recruitment process to be set up with SNIT. SNIT is the pension authority in Ghana, so you have to make sure that these payments are made for you as well. Some I've seen some companies offer clothing allowance, but basically it depends on the sector, that you and the company that is bringing you. The banking sector would typically provide the things that I've just mentioned, but generally I think it's on the might of the company that is bringing you in, and your ability to more or less negotiate to have all of the above plus more. So it depends on the company that is bringing you in.
Okay, thank you for that. Next section, I just want to talk about, once you're employed or in the employment space, company culture and what that means to you in your experience as well. So when I go for job interviews or for job, the main thing I ask for is the culture and the environment there, just to understand, is it somewhere I want to work? But what do you find the culture in Ghana is? I'll give you another example. In places of employment, you can't be silent in when there's meetings. You have to say something, whether you say I agree, whether you change the words of the previous person's statement, but you have to make your presence felt. Whereas in some other companies, they don't want to hear you. They want to hear you once they've asked you for your opinion. How does it work generally in your sector and in Ghana, as you found? And is it a misconception that people think that you have to know your place and your levels in the company before you speak?
So that also, I think the first answer I would say is it depends. It depends on the company. There are companies where they want you to speak out. I mean, it's not speaking out. It's like you're probably not, doing the job. You'll find that some of these, telco related businesses will want somebody who's outspoken, and always more or less challenging management, to make
What's
things.
telco? Sorry, I didn't hear that. You say telco?
Communication.
Telcos, I mean telecom
Oh,
companies.
sorry.
Sorry, so sorry about that. So these would typically want somebody who is outspoken, who is out there, especially with the space that they are in. But when you talk about cultures, yes, there's Ghanaians have this um, elderly, when an elder speaks you don't say it. Those things are there, they're subtle, but there are some companies that would actually want you to be outspoken. If you are not, you probably are not doing the right thing. But generally we still have those um, traits of traditional cultures in some of these companies, especially when it's a one-man business. Big companies will have structures that would have avenues for you to speak out. But I would say that, even whilst in these companies, you need to monitor what is happening. You need to understand your surroundings, basically. Because if not, you probably would, step on somebody's toes, But culturally, yes, for especially one-man businesses and businesses with not, without these structures, you'll get that when I speak, you don't speak kind of arrangements. But most of these companies with structures make room for constructive criticisms and having to speak your mind. You know, and the telecommunication sector is one example, because I personally know that in some of these spaces you have to be, vocal. Otherwise, you probably would
Contribute.
not have a job. But it
Okay.
depends. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. just wanted to get your opinion on that. What would you say your typical day is like? So from morning, I'll tell you my day. It's traffic is not bad. I take the train. The train is temperamental at times, but I've managed that. There's maybe Wi-Fi on the train. I'd wake up early. Maybe the day before the night, I'd wake up and maybe do some work beforehand at 6, get on the train at 7 before COVID. And then I'm day to day, it's fine. The hustle and bustle is not that great. And then I come home. The traffic is, as I said, I take the train, so I don't experience that. But what is your day to day like in Ghana? Someone asked this question a few calls ago, so I wanted to ask you this as well.
Okay, so um, I'm an early riser. I would typically be up by 4 a.m. Um, sort a whole lot of things out, and including bathing my kids before they go to school. So I do a whole lot of non work related stuff before I set off for work. I would get to the office around 8:30. I'm not doing court anymore, so I don't need to get to the office very early unless I have a call or a meeting. If I can't do it at home, I make sure I get into office early. But typically, I would get to the office by 8:30, and most days very busy. Phone calls, meetings, and the space that I'm in, it requires me to be available. Almost like the entire day for any client issues. Some clients are very particular. Some work I do myself because I like to let the client, know that they are getting, you know, my time. So it may not be for others, but for me, I like to give it a personal touch sometimes when it comes to work. So I get to have this busy schedule, pick a lunch break, maybe. Actually, don't do lunch breaks. I have meals in between. For that, I'm not being that healthy, but whatever I can get to grab, I do that. What I notice we do not do a lot, which I would, on hindsight, have wished for, is to live close to work. You know, where I live, it takes me. I go. I'm somewhere around Legon. For those that know, Ghana very well, I'm around Legon. It takes me about an hour and a half to get to Cantonment, where my office is. If I'm to leave home around 6:30, right? During COVID is better because the kids are home, so there's less traffic. But generally, it takes me about an hour and a half to get to work. If I lived near cantonments, it probably take me a shorter time. So in effect, I would say I've been wasting money, driving to the office because the time it takes to get to the office, you can be doing something that can pay you money. So advice for those that are actually looking to relocate, try and find accommodation that's close to work because that saves a whole lot of time. Otherwise, you spend too much time in traffic. Even if you live far, you probably will want to look at the peak times. Basically, I cannot say for public transport, it's not like the UK one. I can definitely assure you. So that one, I wouldn't say you should back your hope on public transport. But if you're able to time, for instance, when I'm leaving home and I'm getting to the office, if I get to somewhere on the Legon campus around 6:30, it probably will take me an hour and a half to get to the office. If I get to that place around 8, it probably will take me 25 minutes to get to the office. Because so many people are rushing around 6, 6:30, it takes a longer time. But if I'm going around 8, most people have already, passed. So you can manage. But my
Right.
first option would be look for a place that's closer to work. That always helps.
I think that's what I wanted to touch upon because I'm allergic to traffic. I always
Uh,
find alternative routes. Yeah, I need some form of antidote for that.
yeah.
But
So your negotiation with your employer, you need to tell your employer that you want a place that's close to the office as one of the
yeah, or work from
conditions.
home. Times have changed.
Yeah,
I want to
work
work
from
from home.
home. Yeah, now I'm getting used to it now.
Yeah, yeah. So in the UK, when people are moving, they're looking for a house. They'll say, "Oh, actually, in 2 years' time, there's going to be this form of this transport has improved in 2 years' time. So live here because it'll take you 25 minutes to get to inner city London. From there, what do you know about the plans in terms of transport-wise for um, Ghana? So in the future, we're planning to say, actually, you can move to Ebri because they're going to build this railway, they're going to build this, it'll be better for work as well.
Okay, so I'll say there are so many factors that will throw you off if you want to have a prediction like that. Because a change in government always usually change most often, changes the plan. So a government may have a plan to do this road, and then they're moved. The next government comes, thinks the priority is a different road, at another place. So that I would say don't use as the measure. Um, but there are some ones that, for instance, with a breed that you mentioned, there may be some roads being done, in a breed itself, but not necessarily linking the breed to where your work is. So having such a projection will be problematic, especially when you think about the factors that drive road construction. And in Ghana, unfortunately, it's more of who is in power at the time and what they think the priority is. I mean, though they have an agency, is it a NDPC or something, National Development Planning Commission, who's supposed to coordinate all of these things, continuity and stuff. To be honest, they don't really work. So yes, you may be promised, but you may have to stay 5, 6, 7 years, and you may not have that road. So I'd rather say, look for a place that the road is already done, at least that
Okay.
than a promise that it'll be done. Even the private developers that plan road networks, even coming from their location to the main roads, usually they tend to go out of the time frame that they always give. They'll say it will be done in 2 years. You know, the next thing is probably going to be done in 5 years. They never
Oh,
stick
we
to
have
it.
that here in the UK as well.
Yeah, so it depends. So planning at least to avoid that would help. But I think don't put too much on it because most often than not it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
My mum made us buy land, and she said, "Oh, they're building an airport. If you don't buy it now, the airport there won't be any more land left. There's still land there. No one's built anything.
Yeah, yeah,
Empty
yeah.
promises."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
You find that a lot.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a misconception. I suppose it happens everywhere in life. I wanted to ask you about when you go, your network is your net worth. We've only got a few more minutes actually. Your network is your net worth. How does one that only knows their family members and stuff? What's the best tips you give to people to leverage off of their networks, knowing that is who you know in every society, but in particular Ghana as well?
Yes, that helps. That helps a lot. You know, keep those networks going. You never know. People have deals made over functions, weddings, stuff like that. It happens all the time. I mean, you'll be amazed how a simple hello and a few sentences in your local dialect will get somebody to warm up to you, and the next thing you know, there's an opportunity here. It works like that in Ghana. I mean,
Yeah,
have that. You may go to some agencies, um, agencies that typically will be very difficult to deal with, but then you walk in and then you realize that this is somebody that you know you have contact with, either your mom's friend or something like that, and you get a very different reception than if you didn't know anyone. That is not to say that if you you know um, have the qualification and others, you will not be listened to. But then knowing someone, in addition to the qualification, opens a lot more doors. And as I said, it doesn't, sometimes it's not even a question of doing the wrong thing. It's a question of just, I mean, there's a familiarity. I mean, we have this about us. I don't know about other cultures, but you can break the ice, you know once you don't even have to know the person. It can even be somebody who is from your area. In my introduction I said I'm a fanti for Salpon, right? I can walk into a business, to meet somebody who I need to do something, and I go in, and depending on the name, I can always say this person's a fanti. You know what I mean? Breaking the ice with speaking Fanti or finding out where they're from, and having a conversation, um, even without prior knowledge of this person, would open doors. I mean, basically, I've seen it happen. So what my advice would be, look at these features when you are more or less going to some of these agencies or business places, because that always helps. It more or less, relaxes whoever you're going to speak with, and the next thing you know, um, you know, your qualification then follows. Basically, you know what I mean. So it's something that you need to keep close, your network and an open mind, basically.
Mr. Hagen's basically saying attend all your family funerals and all the weddings of who the celebrants you don't really know.
Yes, that helps.
Somebody's written, do you know any opportunities in the pharmaceutical sector in Ghana?
Yes. So for the what I'm aware of is, in terms of granting of licenses, there are certain criteria that you need to meet, and that includes the physical location of, you know the pharmaceutical company, and this is um, for those that do retail, right? So I'm aware that if a pharmacy is sited too close to yours, chances are that you'll not be given a license. So there's some location criteria that you need to take account of. But in terms of manufacturing, as a space that you're entering into, there's very little I can tell you now, because I'm not too much in that space. But for the retail, that's what I'm aware of. Um, I mean, I can always look into it. If the person has a specific area in the pharmaceutical business they want me to look at, I can always provide you with additional information on a later date, and Jackie can share with you. Yes.
Thank you. Where can people get your services? So if somebody wanted to hire you or your two sets of companies, how do they go about doing that? Is it just via your website? Should we share your details online as on the platform as well?
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
pharmacists,
So I have actually, you have put it on there. So that's a website. There's a lot of information there. My details are on there. I'm open to have a conversation anytime. My friends keep telling me that I should be billing for every second that I talk, but I'm more of relationships, first, than jumping into asking for money. So I'm open. You can always give me a ring. My phone number is also on the website. I'm happy to answer your queries. If I have information, I can always help. I know how, relocated is. I mean, as I said, I've had friends who've tried it, so at least I understand where, you'll be coming from when you reach out in terms of the assistance that you need. And I'm happy to support. I have a team that is ready to support, basically.
so I was just reading the chat. You can see that Kwami's left the details of your business as well. Thank you so much. And we're on the last questions now, but I wanted to find out, so if people can send in their last questions, but I always, before I leave, someone's written, is there a public site where you can read on case laws in Ghana to follow up major discuss decisions and precedents?
Yes, I mean, the sites that I've seen are more of decided cases that are codified in some softwares. So you can always search for subject matter case law, and you can get previous cases that have been decided, pop up. And those are softwares that you can purchase. Up to date live cases, I doubt it, but I'm pretty sure that some people would be working towards that. As I said, I'm not too much in the litigation space, so I may be a little bit of bit out of touch when it comes to case law and that which comes out immediately after a case is decided. But I'm aware that there are various softwares that have cases codified, and with a subject matter search, you can get previous cases, Supreme Court cases, and lower court cases as well.
Thank you. I always ask the attendees what Ghanaians they are inspired by, apart from your parents or loved ones that we can't call ourselves. Um, and your pastor. So who inspires you? So with I always give the example of with Nigerians or even Indians that I'm researching on now. If I go on YouTube, I can find a plethora of interviews. I can, see what they're saying from 3 years ago to 5 years ago. I can see them. But who are the Ghanaians that you would like us or have inspired you and that you listen to that have your ear? Your camera's
Oh,
off. Okay.
so in terms of who's inspired me, it depends. All my answers start with depends. So I love music. So I have had a few that I've looked up to in the music space. Ambule, being a Fanti, Ambule is a good source of inspiration to me. When I'm bored, I listen to him. In terms of leaders, I have we're looking at historians. I look up to some historians. I'm a lover of history as well. Natural fact, I my first major is in history, so I look up to Professor Dufresne. Just to throw out a name there, he's one of my inspirations when it comes to the historical space. Generally, in terms of life, I'm religious, but I'm not your 100% going to church, um, you know, kind of guy, But a few of the religious leaders, inspirational preachers, Otabel and others, I love to listen to. Um, so that's it. And in terms of who shaped me, I think maybe my parents did. My mom, the soft side and the compassionate side, um, the side that has a lot of empathy, and my dad, work focus, don't take no for an answer. You can do anything you can attitude. And I think that sums up my me basically.
Thank you. Do you read books, and what's the last book you read or are currently reading, if you do?
Okay, so last book, I'm a collector of books, right?
Love
I like
that.
to collect the books, but I won't say I read all of them.
My kind of guy.
Oh yes, I mean I have a whole case full of books. I keep buying them because I love them in the shelf. I love reading legal dramas, John Grisham novels. I have some that I haven't read, but when you talk about novels, I gravitate towards those kind of books. I love anything that I think would impact me. So it can be, a memo of somebody. I actually want to get that of Barack Obama and read. Um, I have that of the wife, but I haven't read a page, because I haven't had a need to. So I'm selective. I probably would look at what book I benefit from the most and read first. I'm not your reader that reads everything. And anytime I say that, people say, "But you're a lawyer." I said I only read the ones that I'm going to use, not every book. So basically, legal dramas when you're looking at legal, fictional stuff, John Grisham stuff when you're talking about novels. But basically, anything that has an impact on me, I'll read. Even a cooking book. I'm learning how to cook, so I'm sure the next book I'll buy will probably be a cooking book.
Hey. Amazing. Audiobooks are now my thing, so I can work or do whatever while I'm listening to the book as well.
I think I'll look into that. That sounds um, easier.
Yeah, it's much easier. Much easier. You can multitask. That's come to an end. Is there anything you'd like to add or share with us before we close?
Okay, so I had mentioned that I had a few tips that I put down. I actually have 5 tips. Let me just run quickly in a minute. So first of all, I would say that if you want to do your or relocate back to Ghana, have a company do due diligence for you in the sector that you want to do business in. That is critical. There are companies and firms like mine that will do due diligence for you. And even if you want to invest in an existing business, we can do due diligence on that business, checking their regulatory compliance and all the stuff that you'll need to know before you take a decision to jump into a partnership. So that's one. Have a market survey done in the space that you want to operate. That helps a lot. Definitely organize trips back to Ghana to see things for yourself. Don't go on what people say, because that always comes out, not exactly as you expect. So have that, coming, and finally, you know, basically reorient yourself when you come back, especially if you've been out of Ghana for a while. Get to know Ghana again. You may be Ghanaian, but you have to be back in tune with Ghana to be able to make it. So that's the final one.
Thank you so much. I think I've missed one. So one, have a company do due diligence in the sector that you're trying to go into. The next one being have a market survey done in the space you want to operate in.
Mm-hmm.
For,
And then make sure you come back in a few
yeah,
times to see for yourself what
yeah.
you're getting into, and don't always rely on what people say, because those tend out not to be accurate. And a reorientation, you know, that reorient yourself as a Ghanaian when you come back in. Attend the funerals, attend the functions, have the conversations, have the network. All of these things, more or less go into reorienting yourself. So you may be a Ghanaian. Don't take that for granted, because people think that I'm Ghanaian. So when I go back, everything falls into place. But once you've been out for long, things may have changed, attitudes may have changed. You have been shaped by the new place that you've been. You know, know that when you come to Ghana and somebody says that I'm meeting you at 7 o'clock, yes, they may meet you at 7, but have room for the fact that they may come in at 8. You know what I mean? Manage whatever expectations that you have, and I think all of this you'll get to know once you come in a few times, and then more or less survey the space, rearrange yourself as a Ghanaian, and that would always help.
I'm going to be annoying because I've seen that you've written it down. I only have 4.
Ah,
Visit Ghana
I think I
regularly.
just I just I just expanded the reorientation,
Okay, okay,
the
okay.
various aspects of the reorientation. Visit
Oh,
the
okay.
visit the funerals and the weddings. Do your networking. You know,
Yeah,
manage the expectation. You may have had some cultural changes when you went there. 7 o'clock is 7 o'clock elsewhere, but 7 o'clock can be 700, 7:20, 7:30 in Ghana.
yeah,
So
yeah.
more or less, you can be Ghanaian again. It may be that you've been out for a while and you may have adopted other standards, but yeah, come and have a feel of what it is, and then you can manage your expectations. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. We will be sharing this on YouTube so you can watch it again and again and again. Just to let everyone know as well that we have our physical, God willing, networking event on the 22nd of December at Pedrassi Lodge. We will be sending more information about, I think Kwame will put the link on in terms of how you can purchase, but also how you can join and support the event as well. But thank you so much for your time. I know people pay for this consultation and we've asked so much. We are very, very grateful. Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.